Again, everyone, welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, there really is nothing more offensive than may carry states. Think about it. Just think about the concept of may carry. That's where literally the government gets to decide if your life is valuable enough for you to protect it. That's literally what it comes down to, and that's how may carry regimes worked. Up until, of course, they were all smacked down by New York Pistol and Rifle Association v. Bruin. No state has been more egregious in absolutely abusing the rights of their citizens through the may carry regime than the state of New York. And despite the fact that the United States Supreme Court smacked them down, they just did not back off. They ran right back to Albany and they created all new laws. And the state legislature was not alone in that, because New York City did it as well. Well, finally, that has come to haunt them in some ways, because we have a big ruling out of the Southern District of New York in the United States District Court, and it's one that all of you in the Big Apple should be aware of.
New York says you have unpaid parking tickets. Now you can't have a gun permit. Then the court says it doesn't say that in the Constitution. Y'all gotta prove it. If this was a poll and the states had to vote and the tally came out 43-7, 43 would win. The states that did make you get a license or a permit just wanted to make sure you wasn't a felon or had some kind of violent history and you wasn't gonna shoot nobody with it. That's the only requirements, but not New York. New York said, bring on those civil lawsuits, y'all. We ready for it. We got big bucks. Bring on those civil lawsuits. On top of that, who gave you the right to judge anybody? Who y'all to judge? You're a man just like that person is a man or a woman. Who gave you the right to judge them? Told y'all couldn't do that. And here y'all go doing the same exact thing I told y'all couldn't do. New York still hasn't provided any historical evidence proving that they have the right to take away a person's Second Amendment rights for anything other than violence and killing someone. In other words, you can't take away my Second Amendment rights because I owe parking tickets, because I owe child support, because I owe credit cards. None of that has anything to do with my Second Amendment rights. The Bruin case set a list of standards for the nation to follow. Everyone has the same list and has to pass the same test all over the country. So said the Supreme Court. But New York thinks they're special. They gotta have their own extra rules and test on top of test on top of test. The Supreme Court said, it is our decision that you can't do that. Shh. Meanwhile, in New York, migrants are getting into fights with the cops, jumping the cops. Roosevelt Island, jumping the cops again. Times Square, they're shooting at the cops. All of that to get out of jail free. No ICE, no nothing. And New Yorkers can't have the right to protect themselves? Sounds like a civil lawsuit to me.
Supreme Court ruled that when the Second Amendment says there's a right to keep and bear arms, that means a right to carry a handgun outside the home for self-defense. The court struck down a New York law that required showing a special need beyond a general desire for self-defense to get a permit for carrying a concealed gun in public. By a vote of 6-3, the court said no other constitutional right requires showing some special need to exercise it, and that's not how the Second Amendment works. Writing for the majority, Justice Clarence Thomas said local governments can still ban guns from sensitive places, but he said that doesn't simply mean anywhere the public congregates. And Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh said states can still impose licensing requirements, like background and mental health checks and firearms training. Justice Thomas said gun regulations must be, quote, consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearms regulation.
The Second Amendment is not a second-class right. Writing for the 6-3 majority, Justice Clarence Thomas said concealed carry laws in New York and at least 5 other states prevent law-abiding citizens with ordinary self-defense needs from exercising their right to keep and bear arms.
The thing that the Supreme Court said in this opinion was that the only gun laws that are constitutionally permissible are the kinds of gun laws we had in the 17 and 1800s, or laws that were sufficiently similar to those laws. And that really calls into question a number of gun laws, and not least of which the Senate Compromise Bill, which includes funding for red flag laws. But we didn't have any laws like red flag laws in the 17 and 1800s, and so that's a kind of law that might be called into question.